A grassroots movement has started in hopes of launching what they call a national conversation about the impacts of the pandemic measures on everyday citizens. So, beginning June 22nd and running for 3 days in Toronto and online, a citizens' hearing will be the epicenter of hundreds of personal testimonies, expert panel discussions, and a chance to hear from lawmakers and politicians at all levels of government. Sonya Anderson is one of the organizers of the event, and she joins us now to explain just how this movement came to life and where it's hoped to lead in the future. Sonya, thanks so much for joining me today. Great to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's start off by giving viewers a taste of what types of perspectives will be shared on the panel discussions in the sessions of this event.
Ooh, we've got a combination of expert testimonials. So we've got everything from scientists, lawyers, medical doctors that will be sharing some of their scientific expertise with Canadians and telling them what they feel has happened, what they feel could have been done better, and some of their own personal experiences as well. And then in addition to that, we've got what I think is the real reason that we wanted to do this is to hear from everyday Canadians and hear the impacts that these government policies have had on them in the last couple of years, and what they also think could be done better for the future.
Okay, and what brought this about? How did it sort of come to life?
So I'm a member of the Canadian COVID Care Alliance, and I chair our Government Relations Committee. And in our committee over the last few months, we've been talking about ways that we could engage Canadians and politicians to see what we could do to have Canadians' voices better heard by our politicians. And so we looked to a few different examples that were already going on out there. So, for instance, people are probably familiar with the Senator Ron Johnson hearings in the States. And then about a month or two ago, Senator Malcolm Roberts in Australia held a similar type of hearing. And so we were able to reach out to him. He was most gracious with his time. We had 2 Zooms with him and asked him some questions, best practices, what would he do differently? And the one thing he highly recommended is make sure you add a full extra day just to hear the testimonials that you'll hear from people, because there are so many people out there that are hurting and their voices aren't being heard.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this is obviously the pandemic is worldwide, more than just a Canadian problem, as you're saying. They've held these hearings in Australia and the US. And how many people do you have on your panel if somebody were to listen in online?
Yeah, so we have a panel of 3 individuals that will be listening to testimonials. And of the people that are testifying, we have a total, well, it's over 50 and
Wow.
counting, it keeps growing. And these are both the combination of expert testimonials as well as from Canadian citizens from coast to coast.
Yeah, so people who have just kind of been affected negatively
Yeah,
by the
and
pandemic.
in many different ways too. We wanted to cover right from the beginning, so kind of chronologically, what were some of the issues that started even early on? In the early days when this crisis developed, we didn't really know what we were dealing with, and so there were things like lockdowns and mandatory masking, and what sort of impacts did those have? So the stories started pouring in. My inbox was completely inundated and my phone has been ringing off the hook. We couldn't accommodate all of the people that were reaching out to us. So what we're committed to doing after this event is sharing more through the website. So that's definitely going to be an ongoing project.
I think that many Canadians are alarmed and probably would be alarmed to hear about some of the devastating impacts that came about as a result of this, how this pandemic was managed, right, by various levels of government. So, do you think that there's maybe been a wake up call for the elected leaders in our midst who have had to hear from their constituents?
Well, we certainly hope so, because I think that more and more the tides are starting to shift. You're even noticing in the media that the narrative seems to be changing. Even just most recently with calling for the dropping of the travel mandates. even just a few months ago, that would have been unheard of. But I know that just even myself, the conversations that I'm having with people have definitely changed, where there were topics that you couldn't discuss, even just amongst family members,
You're
are
right.
now a little easier to have. So
Yeah.
that's what we're hoping this is going to do, that we really want to shift the narrative more than anything. We want families to be able to come together and start talking about their experiences, and maybe have a little bit more understanding and empathy for each other, because that's definitely one thing that we were hearing. Honestly, it was just breaking my heart to speak to people and to read these stories. And the one message that came across in every single conversation that I had was, thank you so much for doing this, because nobody is listening to us. So we wanted them to know that we're listening, that other Canadians across the country will tune in and hopefully listen. And even if they don't stay for all 3 days, 9 to 5 testimonial, if they pop in and out of the live stream and catch some of that, and then hopefully have a little bit more empathy and a willingness to listen to what their neighbors are saying.
And now, Sonia, why is it so important to tell that human aspect of the pandemic? Why, why is that so important?
Yeah, I think it's because that's really been lost over the last 2 years. It's really strange. Canadians are known for being such kind and gentle people, really, around the world. We're normally regarded as the peacekeepers. I've traveled far and wide as a Canadian. I'm always proud of that cultural image that people have of us. But I really think that many Canadians have been shocked to see that their fellow neighbors haven't been so kind over the last 2 years. The people avoiding each other, and stay away, or even conversations that you couldn't have within families, is it's been so hard.
Yeah,
So
I've never seen division like this before either. It's if there's family member against family member, people aren't friends anymore. And like you said, neighbor versus neighbor. It's been something else to watch, that's for sure. So, Sonia, in planning for future setback or perils that our nation could possibly face, hopefully nothing quite this devastating, but why is it so vital to have that cost benefit discussion from all sectors of the industry?
mhm, I think it's because this crisis should have been handled in very specific ways. There are a lot of people out there that will tell you that there were emergency management plans in place, and have been for well over a decade. Yet, for some strange reason, those just got thrown out the window and weren't followed. So, it's really important that we need to take this back to the really sensible planning that was already put in place. Take a look at what should we have done to follow that, and what can we do in the future. So this was handled predominantly as a health crisis, but the reality is it should have been handled by people that had expertise that would have covered a broad range of topics, from the economic impacts to education. There's so many different areas that should have been handled, and this shouldn't have just been put in the hands of medical and health professionals and scientists who have a very narrow scope of interest and practice. This should have been handled the way it was planned to be handled over a decade ago.
Because I think the important part of this is it is hearing those personal testimonials and personal stories, but more than just that, it's to come up with a plan for the future, right? And to see how things could have been done differently. So, do you think that this will create a more robust preparedness plan?
Absolutely. And not only that, but even dusting off some of the plans that were already there and have just been sitting on the shelf. So there are people that are experts in emergency management planning. There are teams that should have been called upon, that still can be called upon. And it's really important that we don't just go about reacting to crises as they come along. They should be handled in a much more planned, managed, calm way. There, when you have a plan, you can tackle these things so much better, and with far less collateral damage than what we saw here. So hopefully, politicians will listen. Part of what we're doing on the last day, one of the last sessions of the morning, we have a cross-partisan round table. And we have invited two politicians, from two MPs from each of the four major national parties. We've also invited two senators, two MPPs or MLAs from each province, and then two municipal politicians to join us so that we could see a really broad scope of government. And we asked them some pretty specific questions about what they saw were some of the impacts on their own constituents, what did they personally do to help some of their constituents, and what recommendations would they have to go forward to create better management so that the impacts that they saw within their own ridings don't happen in the future.
So, what are you hoping to achieve by starting this national discussion?
So, a couple of things. One is that we really hope that people can understand each other, have better conversations with each other. We wanted to give those that have been suffering through the past couple of years a platform where their voices could be heard. And then we wanted to really work hard towards shifting the narrative. And that means working together with other organizations out there and working together with media such as yourselves, and also working with various levels of government to really work in the best interests of Canadians.
Okay. Now, I know you're not only asking people to join the event via the live stream, but I also understand that you still have a call out for people to share their stories. I know you were mentioning you've got, over 50 or something. Are you still looking for more people to join? And how, basically to share how they've been personally impacted by lockdown measures, right? So how can people do this on your website? How can they reach out to you?
Right. So, for the purposes of this 3-day event, right now we're full. We only had so many time slots that we could fill. As is, the people that will be participating, they get 10 minutes and then 5 minutes of a Q&A session with our panelists.
Wow.
And for everyone, that was so hard to ask them to just limit their time to 10 minutes. But we
I
had
bet.
so many stories. But what we wanted to do, and one of the things that we've invested in with this conference, is very high quality tech so that we could record everything. And then we're going to package each one of the testimonials that comes in and upload that to the website so that it can live on. We're going to be sharing that through social media so that we can get a broader audience, recognizing that these things are going on. And then ongoing, we want this to be a living website where people will be able to upload video, or there's some people that are a little too shy to share, in person or online. So we've offered that they can submit a written testimonial as well.
Okay, and then just a reminder, this is a 3-day event, right? It begins on Wednesday, the 22nd, and
Correct.
goes.
Wednesday, the 22nd through to the 24th. We're live streaming it through our website from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. And it is the website is www.citizenshearing.ca. And so if you go onto that website, we're still adding the link now, still adding things to it, but the link will be there that people can sign up to participate, and they can hop on and off during the course of the 3-day event. And then they can also watch it after the fact.
Okay, and you are having people sit in live as well, right? And you have limited seating for that.
Absolutely. So we have 40 seats available on all 3 days. And so if any of your audience members are in the Greater Toronto area, what they do is they go to our website, or I can actually give you an email right now. We ask them to register for those seats because we know that a lot of
Those are
people are
going to fill up
want to run.
fast.
So for that, they would go to info at canadiancovidcarealliance.org. And then someone, and if they let us know that they're interested in attending, they can reserve up to 2 seats for that event.
Okay, and I believe there's a roundtable discussion on Friday, and it might be of particular interest to some of our viewers. This is with various politicians from all parties and all levels of government, including senators, right?
That's right. That's we've invited, so we're still waiting to hear back. We have definitely many that have accepted, and we're still waiting to hear from others. And but yeah, we're hoping to get a really good, robust discussion and some sharing. You know, what worked in one community could certainly transfer over to another community, and often you get a lot of really great, innovative ideas from just sharing your stories with each other. So we're hoping that those that reach out and join that round table are going to be part of the solution and part of helping us use this event to springboard to a greater impact further on, because this is really just the start. We really need, in Canada, we need a full, proper investigation into what went on and measures that were taken, and we truly need a national inquiry to get to the bottom of all of this.
That sounds fascinating. Sonya, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to seeing you and your guests.
Thank you. Sonya Anderson is one of the organizers of a citizens hearing, and you can stream the whole event at citizenshearing.ca.